Hi everyone, how are you all doing? Today I decided to make this video. After a long time break, I got just busy and I want to show you the result. Before talking about my orchids today, I want to remind you that this video has 2 episodes. This is gonna be third episode of this video, and if you didn't watch that previous videos, you have to go there and watch, because I hope that you will learn something from those videos. In my previous videos I talked about orchids, which way is the fastest way of growing orchid roots. If you don't have orchid roots in your orchid, if you don't have any roots, which way is the best? And I showed you my orchids which I was growing in water culture. I showed you 3-4 different kind of orchids, and I told you that my Oncidium Bulbophyllum and Jewel Orchid were doing great in water culture. And later on I put this live moss on top of these glass beads. They were sitting on top of this glass beads that time, and I added some live moss here. And as you see, this jewel orchid is growing, still growing, and it has few small roots. And if I want to show you the size of this orchid, see, this is tiny orchid. You see, it's the size of my finger, and it was half of my finger. It had only that big leaf, this big leaf, and that time when I showed you, it started growing the second or third leaf, and now it branched, as you see, and it's growing, and it's growing in water. I never change this water. Whenever I see the water is going down, I add some water, and sometimes I add little bit water with fertilizer, and I never change this water. And this is Oncidium orchid. It's sitting here and growing roots. Sometimes these roots die back and they grow new roots. And this is Bulbophyllum, and its baby is forming. You see here, it's forming bulb now, and it has good roots also. And I told you that I didn't have good results with Phalaenopsis orchids. That time I showed you some orchids which were seeding in water culture. Among those orchids were mini orchids like this orchid, and I had 2 huge orchids in water culture. And after I didn't see any result, after months I didn't see any results in water culture. My 2 orchids which didn't have roots, they didn't grow any roots in water culture. After that I decided to place them in this greenhouse. You see here, I placed that time, I showed you, I placed that time 2 big orchids. One was blooming, and I cut the spike, flower spike, and I placed it here. And that orchid had 1 or 2 roots. And that orchid, what it did, when I placed it here in the greenhouse, after 5 days it started growing new root. And this orchid also, after 5 days, right away when I placed it, them both in this greenhouse, they both started growing new roots. This one started growing right away, lots of roots. I was expecting that this orchid will grow these roots, but it didn't grow from these places. It grew from different places which I didn't expect. You see, it's growing roots from top, and from the bottom part it has only one root. And that orchid, the other orchid which had beautiful flower spike, and I cut the spike and placed it here, it had two roots. And when I placed it here, it started growing other small root, and by accident some of my kids, or I don't know what happened, my growing light, somebody turned off the growing light, and these orchids were sitting on the shelf under the growing light, and for 3 days it was left without light. Somebody turned off the light and I didn't see. And after 3 days, when I noticed that they were sitting under no light, when I checked it, that root started dying. It was already dead, the new root. And after that, when I turned on the light, they started doing good, and that orchid, it stopped growing new roots. It was growing only one root, and I was so happy to see that root. And after that root died, it started growing new leaf, only one leaf. But this orchid, let's talk about that orchid, then I will come to this orchid. And then after some days, it fall one leaf. It had only two leaves that time when I was placing it in the greenhouse, and one leaf started yellowing and it fall. And I wanted to make the video about that. And most of time when I want to make video about some changes, I don't have that time to make video, and sometimes I lose my plants, and I didn't take out that yellow leaf. I wanted to show you what was going on there. And that yellow leaf, it started decaying and it damaged the whole plant, because I forgot to make video and show you right away that day. And see that dead leaf, it affected to the new leaf, and the new leaf decayed and the whole plant started decaying. And after some days, I found that orchid was totally gone. And this orchid, you see, it grew lots of roots, lots of new roots, and it ate itself. You see, it yellowed two leaves, see? And in order to grow these roots and these new leaves, I will tell you how many new leaves this orchid grew since that time. One new leaf, this is new leaf, and this is second, this is fourth, this is fifth, this is sixth. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 5, not 6, it's 5. 5 new leaves. You see, the first new leaf was smaller, and it's growing bigger and bigger leaves. Why it's like that? Because at that time when this orchid was growing new roots and it was growing new leaf, this orchid didn't have any energy, and it took its energy to grow this root and this leaf. It took energy from these leaves, and that's why that energy was not enough to grow this leaf. That's why this leaf, you see, I will take out this and show you. This leaf is smaller than these leaves. Usually if the orchid is happy, it has to grow bigger leaves. Every time it has to be bigger than this previous leaf. And you see, this leaf is smaller than this one. This is previous, and this, this is next leaf after this leaf. And see, there is no enough nutrition. That's why this leaf is smaller than this one. And you see, the next leaf after this leaf is more smaller than this one even. You see, it means that this orchid doesn't have enough nutrition, and this leaf will stay for the rest of its life, will stay like this. It will never grow. It will stay tiny like this. And see, now this orchid, when it has enough roots, and these roots, you see, before I took this orchid from the sphagnum moss, it was growing into the sphagnum moss, and this root, even it branched. You see, it's growing other roots here from this main root, secondary roots. And see, now these roots started taking something from this sphagnum moss, something, and these leaves are becoming more bigger than these previous leaves. You see, because this orchid has roots, and it can take moisture, and it can take something which it needs from the sphagnum moss. Even I didn't, I didn't water, and I didn't put any water with fertilizer on top of the sphagnum moss. Still, it's taking something from this moss, and it's becoming more bigger. See, new leaves are becoming more bigger than the previous leaves because it has now roots. And that time I showed you about the Cattleya orchid. See, I placed it in a juice bottle that time when I showed you. Then I put them all together in this greenhouse. You see, Cattleya didn't root. It's dead, and I don't need to keep it here in the greenhouse, and I will take it out. And now what I want to tell you, here I left one Phalaenopsis orchid, mini orchid, in the water culture. That time when I showed you some mini orchids, and I planted them in a bark, which I used the way which I usually use for my orchids. I used my homemade medium, and I planted them in a pot, and I don't remember which one I planted that time. I didn't mark them, and I don't remember which orchid was that time, and that's why I forgot. And I don't remember. It's not important something, but I want to talk about this orchid. If I knew which one I planted that time, I would show you, but I don't remember now. And this orchid, this only orchid I left in viticulture, and after months I didn't see any results. That time when I was placing them in a greenhouse, and some of them I planted in a bark, it was months, and after months when I didn't see any results, I decided to plant some of them, and I decided to put which didn't have any roots, I put in a greenhouse here. And only one orchid which had few roots, I decided to leave. I wanted to see the result, Viticulture is also good, but the process doesn't go faster, and you have you have to keep your eye on this orchid, what is going on here. But in this method, you don't need to worry. You just put here, and you don't need even to water. The sphagnum moss stays always moist. See, it's not soggy, it's always moist. Since that time I didn't put any water, and I keep the lid on, closed like this, and you have less bothering here. That's why here you see, when I didn't see any result, I decided to cover the strings and the roots with this egg box. This is egg box. and I cut it in small square pieces and put around the roots. Why I did that? Because when you keep water, the half cup or vase, the top part of the orchid, it stays dry and it's not good for the roots. When they stay dry and the rest is in water, that dry part and which stays in the water, that part, they are not equal. And even though the water can go up to the orchid, but it's not something good environment for the orchid. I don't know, they don't like, probably it's cold for them, that's why they don't grow roots fast. That's why I decided to put around the roots this egg box. Here it's warm and humid. That's why roots grow faster. After 5 days, these roots started growing, and now you see how long they are. It's going fast, very fast. These roots are growing. And here I want to open and show you. Even here I never change the water, I just add. Now this orchid is sitting in the water with fertilizer all the time. I never change this water. Whenever I see the water is becoming less, I add water, and every time I add water with fertilizer. I don't put clear water here, and I will show you the result. You see here, this orchid is sitting in the water with fertilizer all the time. As you see, these roots are firm, they are not decayed. You see, it's firm, all of them, even though they're looking brown and black, but it's not that, it's live roots. You see, I'm squeezing and it's firm. And now after I think 2 months, I have these roots, and these roots are not thick, they are small, tiny, because this is this is mini orchid. It cannot have this kind of big, huge roots, and according to the size, the roots are thin also, see. But I don't like viticulture, I don't know, because the process is not going fast. Here new leaf started growing. Yesterday I noticed that new leaf is growing. See, from the center you can see new leaf. It started showing its head, and see how many roots I have now. But I am not happy with the result in viticulture. After showing you this orchid, I will plant it in a bark also, you see. And for that, viticulture is not easy, especially for the people like me, who doesn't have time. It's not for them to grow orchids in viticulture, and the leaves, they don't feel happy, and they don't grow new leaves very fast. In the bark medium or in the sphagnum moss, they grow roots, and they grow, see, new leaves very fast. This orchid is not growing any new leaf, but it grow some roots, and you see how many leaves this orchid grow. And today I have to tell you something. In order to plant this orchid, I chose before telling you about how to plant this orchid, I have to tell you something about my mistake. Here I talked about the other orchid which had 2 roots at the time when I was placing it in this greenhouse. If I knew that time that it's not good to place orchids in a greenhouse, instead of placing them in a greenhouse, if you have a few roots, small roots, and you are scared that you can lose that small root, if you don't know how to take care of that, if you don't know what to do, it's better to plant it in this way. It's better to use this way than to place it in a greenhouse, because you have even one root which can provide with nutritions your orchid. Even one root is enough to keep this orchid alive. In a greenhouse, the orchids which have roots, they don't feel good, because they want to be outside in the air, and they can grow, you know, new roots. These orchids, they had few roots, and now you see how many new roots they are growing in this cola bottle. In my previous video I showed you, I talked about this method, and if you wanna watch that video and learn in details about this method, you can go to that video and watch. You see how many new roots these orchids are growing in this cola bottle, because there is water always, and this, the medium is not soggy. It's little by little the water goes up, and the orchid roots, they grow very fast. If you have few roots, even one small, the size of my finger, this much root in your orchid, it's better to place to plant it in the medium than to place it in the sphagnum moss in the greenhouse. That was my big mistake. If I knew this method before I placed it in the greenhouse, I would never place it here. I would better to plant it in a bark. That was my mistake. And you know, after that new leaf died because of this dead rot leaves, the roots, the roots were still good, that old roots, not new root. I didn't have any new root. That old roots, they died after I took from this greenhouse. I throw it away. I kept couple days in a cup with water. In the cup I placed some lava rock. I have to talk about that method also. To root, some people use that method. They put lava rock in the cup, and on top they place their orchids. The orchid which doesn't have any top, or in order to grow new roots. It's very hard, to keep your eye. Sometimes the water can finish in the cup, and you cannot notice. You cannot keep your eye always in that cup, and that way you can dry out the roots, or you can, lose your orchid. The best method is this method, because you don't, bother yourself. You just place it, and sometimes if you have time you can check what's going on here, but you don't need to water it every day, spray water and do something special for that orchid. It's easy. You just place it and you leave it, and you don't water about you don't need to worry about watering or putting something and special something, you don't need to do. And some people, they grow roots on the stones. They place their orchids on the stones, and they spray water every day. It's it takes a long time to see new roots from the orchid, and if you forget 1 day or 2 days, you can lose your orchid easily. That's why the easiest way is this way. And if you have only one root you have to plant your orchid in this way. These are two ways, are best ways. I found the best ways of growing roots from your orchid, these two methods. If you don't have any root, you can place in a greenhouse. If you have only one root, you have to plant in this way. Before you can ask how I learned this method, because I found hundred of orchids from trash, and it's very hard to take care of them, and under the growing light they drink a lot, they become thirsty so fast, and in every 4 days I have to water them. Then I started thinking what I can do, and I found this way, and I tried, and I'm so happy, I'm pleased with this method. And here I can show you other way. This is same, but see here, these methods are same, but in this method I don't have any stone, lava rock under the pot. It's just sitting in the water. See, when I see you see how many new roots it's growing. They like to be on top of the water. See how many new roots this orchid is growing. Even though I showed you when I found these orchids from trash, when I was planting, I showed you how I was planting. I didn't plant them even in a new sphagnum moss. I used all sphagnum moss because I didn't have enough sphagnum moss to plant them all. There was too many. That's why I planted them in an old moss. And see how they're happy. These roots are all new, and see they are going up, even from the pot. You see these roots are coming and they are going up. All of them, they are showing their heads. And this, I have to show you this one also. See, it's growing these new roots, and they are going up also. And these are air roots, they are also new. 2-3 months ago I found them from trash, and they were unhappy, and now you see how they're happy, green and shiny. And how I water them, whenever I see the top dry, I fill this plate which is sitting under this pot. I fill this with water, and I put this orchid in the water, and this water goes slowly up, and it makes the medium equally moist. And after it drinks that water, I don't take this water, and I leave this water. You see now this orchid pot is sitting on top of the water, but it's moist here. See, and this water is always here, and whenever this the medium gets dry, even that time this water is here, but it keeps, this water is evaporates, and it helps this medium, the orchid roots, they love, to sit in here. Don't be scared that you can rot your roots. I don't know why they are not rotting. They're very happy. You see how many new roots are growing, and now I have two options to plant this orchid and this orchid. I am gonna use this method because I will tell you why not this method. And I chose this method because this water is enough for months or you know, for three weeks, 4 months, I can tell you, not 4 months, 4 weeks. So you know, whenever I see here water, less water, I just add, and I don't need to worry about this orchid. That's why I lost roots once, and I don't want to lose these roots again. That's why I chose this way. I'm gonna plant this orchid and this orchid in this way, and I will show you how I'm gonna do that. I already showed you how to plant in this method in this cola bottle, and I am not gonna repeat it because it's so boring for you guys. And just I will show you, for those who didn't watch my previous videos, I will show how I'm gonna plant. I will use cola bottle, and I put some lava rock, and I'm gonna use charcoal, wood charcoal. I have how to make wood charcoal, I have video about that. And I'm gonna use live moss or sphagnum moss, New Zealand sphagnum moss. I wanna use these ingredients. This is bark, which is, you know, this is pine bark mulch. This is mulch, and I have video about this also. I am gonna use these all ingredients and plant my orchid, and I will show you the result. Now I finished planting. Before planting this orchid, I cut the strings from the old roots, and I cleaned the leftover small parts from the old leaves, and I placed here lava rock in the bottom. I don't know how to show you here. Let me hold it. Here I placed some lava rock, and on top I put some New Zealand sphagnum moss, and I put on top of the sphagnum moss I put one layer of charcoal, wood charcoal, and on top the wood charcoal I put some live moss. This is not important. If you don't have live moss, you can use just sphagnum moss, and on top of the sphagnum moss you can use charcoal. The why you use charcoal, because it keeps the roots, it protects the roots from the decaying. That's why every time when I use this method I use charcoal. It disinfects and bacteria, it kills the bacteria right away if there is some bacteria, and the charcoal, it keeps this water always clean, and you will not have the problem with algae growing. You see here, I have these orchids for couple of months in this water, and no algae is growing here. The water is always clean, and I don't need to worry about the washing this bottom part of the cola bottle. And how I placed my orchid, I placed the roots close to the wall of the cola bottle, because I will see how it's growing. If it's happy or unhappy, I can see from these roots. I can observe. And here are the roots. See, from here I can see the other root. I see better, but camera is not showing you exactly the root, that's why. But I see it better than you. And from these roots I can see if they are happy or not. And then I put on top the live moss, I put bark, and I added some sphagnum moss. And on top of this root, here you see this is a root, and I placed this sphagnum moss on top of the root, because it keeps it protects this root. And these air roots will stay in the air. I cannot plant them in the medium. They will stay like this, and whenever they will grow longer, I can direct them into the medium also, and they can grow in the medium, and that way I can take care of these roots. I don't have time to spray them, and I don't have time to keep them always in a good shape like this now. I don't have time to keep them always like this, and most of the time my air roots, they die like this, you see, because I don't take care of them. See, they are dry and they're not happy, even though there is some new small root is growing. And now I have to water it. This is rainwater. I use always rainwater for my orchids. For the first time I water it like this. And this is clean water without any fertilizer. And after 1 week or 2 weeks, I will change the water. I will put here water with the fertilizer. These orchids are sitting always in the fertilizer. This is water with the fertilizer, and slowly it goes up, and they drink from the fertilizer water. See, now I can leave it on the shelf and live with my other orchids. This is all what I want to show you today. Next time I'm planning to talk about fungus gnat, how you can get rid of them, and I have some complex therapy for them, and I want to share with you because this is most common problem. That's why in my next video I'm planning to show you how to get rid of fungus gnats. Thank you for watching. If you are new in this channel, please subscribe for more videos. If you like this video, don't forget to put thumbs up and share with your friends. Thank you. Bye.